والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا وقدوتنا محمد عليه أفضل الصلاة وأزكى التسليم. اللهم علمنا بما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا رب العالمين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. Welcome to Beginning Classical Arabic. It's our Wednesday evening session. We're making good progress, alhamdulillah. And we are involved in discussing feminine nouns. Okay, so when we began our journey in classical Arabic, we were only learning masculine nouns. And for English speakers, this is a little bit more familiar because there is no gender in typical nouns in English. However, there are some nouns in which there is gender for English. So for example, waiter versus waitress, actor versus actress, and so on and so forth. Those words that typically are derived from romantic languages or romance languages, because romance languages do have gendered nouns as well. And I would be willing to venture a guess that most languages in the world today have gendered nouns. So English is kind of an exception in the sense that book has no gender markers, right? We have this it category, which covers everything that is considered inanimate and therefore doesn't have gender. Whereas Arabic, every noun is going to be gendered, okay? Whether it's a book, whether it's a pen, the sun and the moon and the stars, solar system, comets, galaxies, atoms, everything has a gender. And so if it has a gender, then when you are constructing a sentence, the gender has to agree, right? We have to have gender agreement. If you're mubtada, if we're in a jumla ismiya, we're in a nominal sentence, a sentence that begins with an ism, and your mubtada is feminine, your khabar will have to be feminine as well. If you have a khabar that is masculine, then your mubtada will have to be masculine as well. And similar with the case of jumla fi'liya, if we get into, or when we get into verbs and verbal sentences, the verb is going to have to agree with the gender of the one that is doing the verb, which we will get to later, insha'Allah ta'ala. So previously, we had done exercises learning a bunch of new vocabulary, and we noticed that some of the patterns, or the most indicative patterns, the biggest crutch that we have to lean on is the ta marbuta when it comes to identifying what is feminine and what is not, what is masculine and what is not. The ta marbuta is almost a certain sign that the noun is feminine. And so if it's feminine, then its pronoun will have to be feminine as well, hiya. If the noun is feminine, then the demonstrative pronoun, this, hadhihi, will have to be feminine as well, and so on and so forth. So what they're going to have you do here, they say exercise 2, ma hadha wa ma hadhihi. So you're going to have to now recall not simply the name of the object in front of you, but the gender of the object in front of you, right? So if it is a masculine noun, you will have to say hadha. You're making a jumla ismiya. The mubtada is the demonstrative pronoun, either hadha or hadhihi, and the khabar will be the name of the noun that is pictured. Hadha so and so, or hadhihi such and such. So let's get to it. And I realize that some of these vocabulary words, either you will not have gone over in a long time, or they were new and perhaps you didn't get a chance to review them. No shame. I'd rather have you participate and we can all help fill in the gaps or complete each other's answers if need be. So I'll go down my list here. We're going to go from right to left, then top to bottom. Muhammad Mu'tasim, could you please do the first example?
هذا قلم.
Very good. هذا قلم. Listen to how he chose the correct demonstrative pronoun, هذا, because he knew that this was masculine. And then he finished the sentence correctly by not just naming the object, but by putting two dhammas at the end. قلم, because this is a jumla ismiya. قلم is the khabar, and the khabar is marfu'. The khabar is marfu', and we show that with a dhamma in this case. Very good. Brother Awesome, could you please do the second one?
Sure. هذه ملعقة.
Excellent. هذه, feminine. Notice how he chose هذه. ملعقة, which is a spoon. And he said two dhammas on the end because it is khabar, and khabar is marfu'. Mil'aqatun. That was one of our new words last time. What's the dead giveaway that it's feminine? That tam marbuta on the end of it. Great. Brother Sa'ir, could you do the third example?
هذا كتاب.
Very good, mashallah. You got one of the easier examples, mashallah, tabarakallah. I don't even need to write that, I don't think. Brother Mohammed Tariq, could you please do the fourth example?
هذا قميص.
Yes, excellent. هذا قميص. This is a shirt, and shirt is masculine. Great job. Okay. Going down to the second row. We have reached Sister Erum. Could you please do the first example in the second row?
هذا بيت.
Yes, very good. هذا بيت.
بيت.
Excellent work. Yep. I'll just write this out. Pardon my chicken scratch. هذا بيت, right? We have mubtada, khabar. Mubtada is marfu', but we can't really tell because it's هذا. هذا is mabni. It doesn't change. Baytun, a house, is marfu' with a dhamma. And since it is nakira, it is indefinite. We have two dhammas instead of just one. Great job. Moving right along, would someone from the Shahada family tackle the next example?
هذه ساعة.
Yes, very good. هذه, here how he selected the feminine demonstrative pronoun. Sa'atun, this is a watch. Sa'a can also be clock. And sa'atun with a dhammatan, two dhammas on the end because it is khabar, and khabar is marfu'. Also notice that sa'a, the word sa'a, ends with a ta marbuta, which is a dead giveaway that it is feminine. Excellent. And can someone else from the Shahada family do, Sister Samira, do the following example?
هذه سيارة.
Excellent. Same exact thing. Sayaratun means car. It has a ta marbuta, which is a dead giveaway for it being a feminine noun. She put two dhammas on the end because it is the khabar, and the khabar is marfu'. Excellent. Following example, someone from the Sayyid family.
هذا باب.
Yes, fantastic. This is a door. هذا because it's masculine. Babun because it's khabar, and khabar is marfu', and it's nakira, indefinite, which is why it has a tanween. Let me clear this and scroll down to the next line. And Brother Muhsin gets this nice meaty leg over here.
هذه رجل.
Oh, very good. Now, how did you know, Brother Muhsin, that rijl, which is the word for leg, is feminine, especially seeing as how it has no ta marbuta?
Previously, we did it last time.
Pair.
Yes,
But he said pair.
What was that last thing you said?
Pair.
Yes, excellent work. The rule is that body parts that come in pairs are feminine, whereas body parts that come that don't have pairs, that are singular, they are masculine. Excellent job. So this would be هذه, as Dr. Muhsin said, رجل. Very good. And رجلun has two dhammas at the end because it is the khabar, it is the predicate, and the khabar is marfu'. I'm repeating it because we can drill it into your head that way. Very good. Yeah, Sister Syra already went. Sister Masarrat, the following example, please.
هذه دراجة.
Very good. Excellent. Same thing. So we pick the feminine demonstrative pronoun, هذه دراجة, which is a bicycle. دراجة has a ta marbuta at the end, which is a dead giveaway that it is a feminine noun. Excuse me. And since it is a jumla ismiya and daraja is part of the khabar, or is the khabar, we have a dhamma at the end, darajatun. Good, excellent. Everyone's doing fantastic. Let's keep rolling. Let's go to, and as I said, when I go back to the top of the list, sometimes in Zoom it switches the names around the order, so don't worry if the order is going to be different. Brother Muhammad Tariq, could you do the following example here? This nice hand.
I have a question. If the previous example, if it is a one wheel, is it a masculine then?
MashaAllah, you are a faqih, sir. MashaAllah. You know, this is how a jurist thinks. Because the jurists, you know, they look for the fuqaha, they look for the rule, and they're looking to apply the rule everywhere we can apply it, and they're always looking to push the edge. What's the border at which I can apply the rule? Fantastic. Can anyone answer him? Does anyone want to answer him before I answer?
What was the question? Sorry.
He's saying, okay, the raja is feminine. It has two wheels. If we had a unicycle or a bicycle with one wheel, would it be masculine? I love the question.
I think when you're talking about a body part, it matters if it's one or two. But when it's an inanimate object like a bike is bike, whether it's one tire, two tire, or a tricycle with three. To the best of my knowledge.
MashaAllah, that's correct. Okay, good. So Brother Muhammad Tariq helped us identify the scope of this rule with one or two. It is limited to body parts, right? Has nothing to do with bikes, has nothing to do with stationary or anything else. It's only talking about body parts. So daraja is feminine not by virtue of its two wheels, but by virtue of its ta marbuta, right? And so the ta marbuta will not go away. So very good question. Thank you for asking that.
I don't know how to say fingers in Arabic.
Oh, good, because we didn't learn fingers. This is about a hand, which is yad.
Yeah, okay. Haza yad.
Now,
Yadun. Haza yadun.
we did learn figure. Oh, isba' we did learn? Okay, mashallah. So he said, hada yadun. Who agrees with him or disagrees? He chose that yad is masculine.
I think it would be Abehi.
Yeah, correct. We just mentioned our rule about body parts, which is exclusive to body parts. Since there are two hands, then we say هذه. It is a feminine. هذه yadun.
Oh, okay.
Very good. Now I'm gonna see your previous question and raise you another question. If we have someone who has only one hand, does it become hada yadun?
Still hazihi yadun.
I don't honestly know the answer to that question. So that's I really like the way that you thought about that. And I'm interested to know, maybe that can be a research topic. If anybody can.
But I think because these rules are already set, and we cannot change these feminine or masculine by just having the existence of one or two.
I suspect that you're right. but I'm not certain. But very good, excellent work. Okay, question: Are fingers masculine? هذا إصبع. هذه إصابع. I can't recall. I'll have to look that up. I'm not certain. Are fingers masculine or feminine? I don't remember. Let's see. Next example. Okay, I think we're on Muhammad Mu'tasim.
هذا فم.
Very good. هذا feminine. And why did you choose هذا, the masculine one?
Just one mouth.
Yes, we have one mouth. And so, because it's singular, it is masculine. Excellent. Moving along to the Shahada family. The following example.
Is pen like a sag?
Yeah, I was wondering the same thing. It seems like you can pick either one of the two objects that's in it, or you can try to do both. Because from what I recall in the previous lesson, it was two. So if you want, you guys can split it. One of you take one of the objects in the picture, and the other one take the other object.
هذا ساج.
هذه معلقة.
ملعقة. Very good. هذه ملعقة. And I think what we had learned, the particular word that they had wanted to teach us was qidr. I believe that they wanted us to use qidr for this. Obviously, in Arabic, especially spoken Arabic, there are a lot of words for pots and pans and things like that. But qidr by itself is feminine. So if we were to use qidr, just for everybody, since that's the word that we initially learned, if it's qidr, then it would be هذه. هذه قدر وهذه ملعقة. Very good. Both of them with two dhammas because it is khabar. Very good. Someone from the Sayyid family. The next example.
هذه مكواة.
MashaAllah. هذه مكواة. Mikwa from kawa is the verb to iron. To iron, and it is feminine. هذه مكواة. It ends with a pta marbuta, which is why, as a dead giveaway, that it is feminine. Brother Muhsin, the next example, please.
هذه كرسية.
Oh,
Or, no.
No.
we have
Oh, or maybe it's not tun then.
Yeah.
هذا كرسي.
كرسي.
I don't know.
Let's go back to Ayat al-Kursi.
Oh, Ayatul Kursi. Yes, that is true.
وَسِعَ كُرْسِيُّهُ, or not كُرْسِيَّتُهُ.
Kursi.
I mean, definitely I see there's kursi is a difficult one to remember because it doesn't end like a typical masculine noun. So it ends with what's called a harf mu'tal, which is a weak letter, like one of the med letters. Yeah. And even weirder than that, it ends with that letter with a shadda on top of it, which is not typical of Arabic nouns. So that is a little bit tricky to remember. But kursi is masculine. Hada kursi. And if you were in doubt, you can go back to the ayah because oh, this is nice. This is nice. A bit of verb work in here. Because what's the ayah? Wasi'a. We'll teach you a little bit of vocab from the Quran. Wasi'a kursiyuhu. Okay. Wasi'a means to encompass. To encompass. Okay. This is a past tense verb, right? Wasi'a. It's conjugated for masculine. Okay. We haven't learned verb conjugation yet, but it's conjugating for a masculine doer. And kursiyuhu is with a dhamma, which means that it is the doer of the verb. The chair.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Sorry, I think I got a little confused. So I understood when we are talking about feminine, there will be tamil bhuta, and so Regulon was because it's two parts, pair, but why kursi, why kursiyun is like or qidrun.
Good,
Hazihi qidrun.
good,
Why there's, yeah.
excellent. So when it comes to the, okay, let's talk about one thing that's just like super big picture. In the Arabic language, there's two types of rules. Okay, there's one category of rules that are called qiyasi. And qiyas, if you know anything about the way that fiqh works, it's about applying, like learning the reason behind a rule and applying it to something else. And then there's a second type of rules or category of rule that's called sama'i, which means that that's just the way that it's always been said and no one really knows why, right? Okay, so there are rules in Arabic, and Arabic has many more rules than I think English, where the reason for the rule is clear, you apply it, and it's very sensical. But there are sometimes rules in Arabic that are, we don't even really know why. Like, why is a pot feminine? What's feminine about a pot? I don't know. And I think you'd be hard pressed to find anybody who knows. When it came to the other rules that account for many more nouns, that's easy, right? There's linguistic femininity. If something has a ta marbuta, that's easy. There's this kind of singular dual thing with body parts where if the singular, if there's only one of them, then it's masculine, and there's two, there's feminine. That makes sense. As for some nouns that are feminine, they defy explanation like those other two types of nouns. Why is qidr feminine? I have no idea. And I'm not sure that anybody knows. That could be another interesting research topic.
Sorry, my question was not why it is qidr, but why it is written as qidrun and not with tamul buta.
Yes.
That's what I was asking.
Right, I see. That is simply what the word is. I don't know how to explain I don't have a better answer for you. Some nouns are derived from other root words. Okay, so daraja comes from daraja, which means steps or levels, right? Because the pedaling of a bicycle resembles walking upstairs. That's kind of like this idea behind a stairmaster. The form of qidr and how it's derived from its root, I would need to look that up. So I don't know. As for kursi is masculine, it's not feminine. Wasi'a kursiyuhu. His kursi encompasses as-samawati wal arda, and wasi'a is conjugated for masculine. That's good though. Let's take the second to have any other questions. Anybody else have any questions?
If I could piggyback off that for a moment.
Yes, please.
So if we ever get a word like that does not have a ta marbuta,
Yes.
it's literally, if you don't know the derivative masculine feminine, I mean, you'd have no idea how to make the initial word.
Right.
So realistically, if we both were writing, I don't know, a short story and one used the masculine, one used the feminine, unless the reader knew, really it's the correct answer, right? Because is there a book out there that says bicycles are, feminine, this is that in Arabic, or is it just, learning as you go?
I bet if we go back into the classical books of Arabic morphology, that we could find some answers. So I invite anybody to, and I will try to as well in my spare time. But you are right. You are right in the sense that there are certain types of nouns, and they're an extreme minority, right? Because the vast majority of nouns, you're either going to have, it's going to follow one of these obvious rules, right? And we've seen before lots of common nouns that don't have a ta marbuta, and how many of them were masculine? Kitab and qalam and bayt, and all of these, right, were masculine. So we can say that probabilistically, you're very, very safe by guessing that a common noun without a ta marbuta is masculine. However, it's not a fail-safe rule because there are nouns like qidr that are feminine. As to why, what is it about them that makes it feminine? How do we go back into the roots of the language and determine why? Yeah, that's something that I would be really interested to know that I do not currently know.
I think just for people, the Arabic spoken people, for them it's just like, for example, kursi in Urdu, my language, is feminine. We say kursi, so we know that when we talk about kursi, it's a feminine. Key, key is feminine. Chabi, So whenever someone is talking about key, they use feminine. So I think the people who speak Arabic, they know that's feminine. Yeah, obviously, if someone not Arabic spoken readings, then it's problem.
Right. That's a good point too. I remember asking some of my teachers and professors when I was, newer in Medina, why is this feminine? Why is that masculine? And if they didn't know the rules, they would kind of just look at you incredulously and said, because it is, like, how could you, like, it can't possibly be the other one, because that's how they had been hearing it their whole lives, right? So that's where I brought up the issue of rules that are qiyasi versus rules that are sama'i. If a person doesn't know the rule, there's a possibility it could be something sama'i, something that this is just always the way that it's been done, and so it's on precedent. But it is possible that there could be a rule, but we just haven't yet uncovered it. One of the students private messaged me and they said that, for your information, finger one is masculine, but multiple fingers are feminine, which is very useful. Thank you very much for looking that up. And that makes sense. That follows the body part rule that we've been rolling with, which is good.
If you don't mind me asking one other question. So do you know how they initially do it? You know how there's generic rules for body parts, certain inanimate objects, but let's just take it back and say before a car was a car. Do they get together and decide whether it's masculine or feminine at the time? Is there like a...
This is a great question. They actually talk about these sorts of questions in usul al-fiqh. They talk about the theory of language, right? And there's there's three main opinions. I should say that the question is, where does language come from? Is language wahi? Is it revelation? Right? Because we have to think about, where did a language like originate from? Were we literally, like some of the evolutionary biologists would have us thinking, just like grunting and moaning until we kind of pieced together like sounds, and eventually they evolved into meaning? So was it initiated or created by humans, or was it something that was revealed, because Allah says in Surah Al-Baqarah that He taught Adam the names. He taught Adam the names of everything, right? And you'll find usuliyun, you'll find scholars of usul on both sides and a group in the middle. Some say that because of the ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah and others that say that Adam was taught the names, language is revelation, meaning it comes from revelation. Allah gifted us language. And from what I understand, maybe somebody here knows more about linguistics than I do. Noam Chomsky, who's one of the big heads of linguistics in the last 100 years, he seems to have reached a similar conclusion, where as he compared it, I think, to like people are born with like the hardware for language. So he's kind of saying that there's something that's given to us or gifted to us that is not simply acquired and decided upon, but is part innate. Okay. And then there's the second group that says, no, this is something that is made by people. And our evidence for that is that we look around, and if there's something that there comes an object or some sort of invention, and we didn't have a name for it before, somebody coins a name for it, and then it becomes widespread and used, right? Microchip, computer, right? Anything, especially that has to do with technology, we didn't have a name for it necessarily past a certain time period, right? And so there was, even if it was derived from this kind of other meaning or other word, like computer, for example, at some point it was intentionally given a name, and that name stuck and it spread. So they say that this is how language works, period. And then there's a group, and this makes the most sense to me, Allah knows best, that says that it's part and part, right? There's a certain degree of languages, or there's a certain degree of language that is God-given, that is from Allah, revelation. And there is a certain degree where humans interact with it and shape it and rearrange it and change it. What's really interesting to me, for those of you who have been with us from the very first lesson, when we talked about the difference between synthetic languages and analytic language, and how throughout human history, languages began as more synthetic, and synthetic languages are way more complicated. Like, you have a much harder time imagining people inventing synthetic languages. Whereas analytical languages, languages that depend on word order, I have a much more easy, or an easier time imagining that people could invent things like that. And so that the historical trajectory is that language become more analytic over time and less synthetic, which seems to indicate to me maybe a divine starting point, and Allah knows best. But these issues get very deep, and the scholars of Islam have talked about these sorts of issues, and I'm only aware of a small bit of the conversation around these issues, but it is extremely fascinating to think about. We could talk about language theory all day long. Does anybody have any other questions?
Quick question. Say, in my language, we can put any word from any language and use it as our own word on our. For example, if I want to say bulb, I can say ye bulb hai. This has a bulbun, whatever you can call. Can you do this in Arabic also?
Yes, you can. I without knowing what I presume is Urdu, I think that's not really correct. Okay, well, maybe some of you guys can fill me in, because I don't know the language that we're talking about. But however, there is a process for doing this in Arabic, and I'll give you a comical and contemporary example. So when we say in English, like if you pull up to the gas station or the petrol station and you want to fill up the car, right? They usually ask you like how much you want. And so shorthand, you usually say full if you want it full. Well, in Arabic, they've taken that word full and they've put it on an Arabic speech pattern, right? So they said, "fawilha." So they've turned it into an imperative verb on an Arabic speech pattern, but the actual derivation of the word is originally English, from full. They say "fawilha tafwila," "fawaltuhu," right? For any of the Arabic speakers in the room, right? So there are ways in which that's done, and even with other words, like for example, anything that is a forgetting the English term second, muscle, which is like I forget the English term, but for example, something like strategy. It's not the G, it's a loan word, but it has a suffix in Arabic that makes it on an Arabic pattern. I don't know if that's the same thing you're talking about or not. Okay. Yes. No, there's different, right? It doesn't make it Arabic. Here's a question too. This also gets into another question that the Usulis talked about. Allah said that the Quran is Arabic, Arabiya Mubin. But there are some words in the Quran that are originally Farsi words, or originally from other words, or from other languages. Okay, so does this mean that now, does this contradict the statement of Allah that the Quran is not in Arabic? No, it doesn't. All it means is that languages are somewhat fluid, in that they do take in words from other languages. Sometimes they stay loan words, like okay, and then other times they become more native in the language, or they change to become more native than simply a loan word. Like my example with fawilha and tafwila. They've taken a root, or they've taken an English word and they've separated it into three roots, Arabic letters that exist, even though that root word doesn't exist in Arabic, they've put it on the same pattern. Fala, yafulu, fawwala, yufawwilu, tafwila. And they have treated it like an Arabic word in how it's conjugated, how you derive other word forms from it. So that's a much more higher level of involvement and intervention with that word than simply using a loan word like okay, right? But yeah, these things are very interesting.
So similar word like tabib and doctor or doctor or something like that.
Exactly. Like doctor that's a very good example. Doctor in the singular is a complete loan word, right? Complete loan word from the Romance languages. But what's the plural of doctor? Dakatira. So you see now that we've taken the pattern of the singular is 100% loan word, but the plural pattern is an Arabic plural pattern. And this happens all the time with like all these different things. So maybe it would be more useful than to think of it black and white as like words that are or aren't Arabic. We can think of it as languages have a spectrum or a varying degrees of intervention with language, with words that come from other languages. Sometimes they have a very superficial relationship with that word, where they just take it as is and use it in that context. Whereas some of those relationships with quote unquote foreign words are much more involved, and they actually involve making that word their own in some sort of way. And so it becomes part of the language. And this is how, if this process weren't happening, then we would never have new languages, right? Roman gave, or Latin, I should say, gave way to Italian and Romanian and French and Spanish, right? How did that happen? By the importation of other words from the Gothic languages, from other Germanic languages, and then kind of the shifting of phonemes, the shifting of speech patterns, the shifting of vocabulary uses, the shifting of syntax, and all these sorts of things. And then after a certain amount of time, you have a new language, right? But there's always a process of borrowing and reusing and remaking into one's own. Delightful conversation, mashallah. Let's finish our last line of examples in the exercise. And then if anyone has any other comments or questions, we can have them then. Oh boy, I completely lost track of where we were as far as, well, I think Brother Muslim had done kursi. So that leaves us to the last line. I think we're down to Brother Sa'id. Could you do the fridge?
Yes, هذا ثلاجة ثلاج.
ثلاج. We had this just last lesson, so I'll forgive you.
هذا ثلاجة.
Okay, excellent. Now, I want you to listen to what you just said and tell me what sounds wrong about it. You said هذا ثلاجة.
هذا تاء مربوطة. هذه ثلاجة.
There you go, exactly. So there's hints. And
yes, now.
The rule for the vast majority of cases. Very good. Brother Asim, can you do the following?
Sure. هذا مفتاح.
MashaAllah, mumtaz. Very, very good. Next one, Masarrat.
هذا مسجد.
MashaAllah, and what a masjid it is. Ya salam. That's an enormous masjid. Multiple domes. Let's see. And let's have, I'm not sure if Sister Adam got to do one more. Sister Adam, could you complete it for us? Do the last one?
I know it will start with Haza. I forgot what we call star.
No problem. Can anyone help her out, either in the comments or with the microphone? What is a star?
Najam.
Najam.
Oh, Najam. I should know that. That's in Urdu too. Okay. Haja Najmun.
Very good. Hada Najmun. Very good.
Najmun. Najmun.
And no worries about what we should and shouldn't know, because especially it can get tricky with languages to remember what is the same word and what are the different words. Sometimes I think something is a word in some language and it's actually from a different language. And I can imagine with languages, like for example, Turkish. Like I know a bit of Turkish, and Turkish and Arabic share many words. And sometimes I'll think that the word I'm using in Turkish, because my command of Turkish is much weaker than Arabic. Sometimes I'll use a word in Turkish and it's not a Turkish word at all. It's an Arabic word and they don't use it in Turkish. So I'd imagine with Urdu, which has also a lot of loan words, that sort of thing happens as well. Anybody, any questions?
If I could ask a quick one. So when we talked about the human anatomy, 2 parts versus 1 part, and maybe I'm overthinking it, but like the sun, would the sun be masculine? Because I assume that stars, because there's multiple, would be feminine. Or does that have nothing to do with it?
That's only for body parts, right? Because
Yeah.
washamsi wa duhaha, ha, right? So it's like the ha returns to shams, and so the shams is feminine.
I like black and white. There's so many gray areas on this masculine feminine thing. Trying to come up with like the equation, the formula. There really isn't one.
On what do they call it in science? The theory of everything, right? A singular unified theory, right? That would be nice. Now, Arabic has much more of a unified theory than English does, so at least it'll be somewhat satisfying, but not that satisfying. Very good. Any other comments, concerns, reflections, questions? Okay, next time we will jump into the next exercise, which is going to be very useful. It's going to be about manipulating. It'll be about manipulating words and putting them both on masculine and feminine patterns, right? So things that can be applied to both, and making khabars that reflect those sorts of things. Okay, very good, everybody. Thank you very much. And we will see you next time. Wallahu ta'ala alam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum assalam.